and sure there was a cow trying to calve somewhere nearby, I started forward again. I was past the main herd and was sure I had walked too far when I heard heavy breathing and another low moan. I walked faster. Any cow this far from the smell of humans and cook fires was wolf bait, plain and simple. I would sit with her, ready to shout for help if I heard wolves. When the calf was dry, I'd carry it up the hill and the mother would follow. Once I was close enough, I would call to the others for help. I heard another groan and I followed the sound, sliding down a steep slope, catching my balance at the bottom. Then I stopped listening. There was a silence for so long that I began to fear the cow had died and that I was too late. I stood rooted, knowing that I couldn't leave until I was sure. A rustling sound began, off to my right. I followed it but slowly. As I came around an old twisted oak, I saw the mare in the moonlight. I would love to tell you that I recognized her instantly, but I did not. All I could tell was that she was light-colored and that she was in terrible trouble trying to foal. She was lying on her side, her swollen belly jutting upward. I ran across the clearing, then slowed, speaking quietly. Even so, I startled her. She heaved herself half upright, then managed to stand. "Are you wild?" I asked her, talking a little louder. She whickered, and I felt my heart sink, then rise. It was the gray mare, and she knew me. Without fear now, I approached her, rubbing her cheek and her forehead. She was shaking, exhausted, and still her foal had not been born. Her eyes were dulling, and it took all my will to walk to her trembling hindquarters to see if I could tell what was the matter. As I stood there in the moonlight, she heaved once more, straining hard to push her foal into the world. I felt its muzzle and was right, but only one small hoof. "You can do this," I told her, sliding my hands over her back beneath her mane. She leaned against me. "I missed you so much," I said. Without knowing I was going to say it, my eyes flooded with tears. The mare lowered her head and blew warm breath against my cheek. Then she made a low sound that frightened me. I waited for her next push, and this time I pulled out one front hoof free, then reached past it, trying desperately to catch hold of another one. But I couldn't. I rubbed the mare's muzzle again, trying to talk strength into her, trying not to cry. I stood close as she swayed, clearly too tired to stand much longer. Most mares give birth lying down, but I was afraid that if she went down now, she would give up. The next push was long, and her whole body convulsed, her back arching as she strained. I tried again to get the foal into the right position. I touched the other hoof with my fingertips, but could not hold on. I was shaking, furious with myself, knowing I would only get a few more chances before she gave into her exhaustion and lay down to die, taking the foal with her. Oh, how I hated the men who had galloped her so hard. I hated them for losing her like this, or more likely just leaving her behind when she couldn't keep up. When she groaned again, I worked my hand around the second little hoof and pulled, steady but hard. When the mare sagged, heaving out a long breath, there were two hoofs showing and the foal's tiny muzzle. Twice more, and the tired mare heaved, and now that the foal's forelegs were aligned correctly, and with me pulling steadily on them, the baby began to emerge. On the third push, the foal slid into the cool night air. I caught it in my arms awkwardly and staggered a step or two to lower it to the ground, my hands shaking with worry. I cleared the baby's nostrils and knotted the umbilical cord. The foal took a long, jerky breath, then another, slower and deeper. I ducked out of my brat, removing the little gold pin and fastening it inside the hem of my lean, frantic to dry the foal before it was chilled. I worked hard, rubbing its coat. It was a filly, a perfect long-legged filly, and in the moonlight her coat shone like silver. When the foal was dry, I turned back to the mare and saw that what I had been dreading had come true. She had lain down again, and her sides were barely moving. Her breath was quick and shallow, and her eyes were closed. Crying, I wrapped the foal in my brat and settled it on the ground, then went to sit beside the gray mare, talking softly to her, stroking her neck, telling her how sorry I was, that I would take care of her foal and would never forget her. I stayed beside her until she stopped breathing. Then I stood up and stumbled backwards, tears running down my face. No. I whispered the word, but I had meant to shout it. This could not be. I had found her. I had helped her birth her foal, and the baby was all right, and none of it mattered any more because there was nothing anyone could do to help her. I went to the foal and sank to my knees beside it, then lay down, curling myself around the newborn. I inched closer, crying, fitting my chest and belly against its back, laying my arm around its neck. I closed my eyes, telling myself I would carry the foal up the hill in a minute, after we both rested a little. I felt the little filly relaxing inside my embrace. I heard it sigh, and that is how Bebin found us just after dawn.